Hello, I'm Leroy Garcia, and this is Blue Rain Gallery Podcast. Today we're in the studio with a special guest and new arrival to our gallery in Karen Clarkson. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, Leroy.
Nice. I've been watching Karen's work for many years, and I think she's a person that will blend perfectly in our gallery because she's emerging different styles with her own culture, her native perspective. Karen is from the Choctaw tribe and currently works out of Prescott, Arizona. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Karen, where you grew up, how you developed as an artist, how your heritage has influenced your work.
Well, that's a very detailed analysis and hard to explain, but I grew up in a military family where we moved every 3 years. And my father didn't really know much about his lineage because he was adopted. And when I found out finally as an adult, a lot of things became clear to me at that time, why I felt so different, why traditions and ceremony and even nature it seemed like it felt different to me than the way that it affected everyone else. What happened with my artistic journey is that I married very young, when I was 18. And after I raised my children, I finally decided that I needed to start expressing myself artistically. It had always been there. And I was able to express it in various ways growing up. But I started painting after I learned how to draw. And I taught myself to draw by drawing from pictures of my relatives. And what happened is people saw my drawings and commissioned me to do their family. And that is what got me started. And it's just been a long journey of teaching myself how to paint, how to be disciplined in doing paintings, how to honor when I get inspired to paint something, that is what I need to listen to, because that's the only way that it seems to transfer onto canvas what I'm really feeling. So I don't paint things that don't inspire me. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I feel I'm very blessed to be able to do that now, and that's where I am at this point in my career. Well,
a question would come to mind is, do you have formal schooling, or are you self-taught?
I'm self-taught. I never went to art school. I actually didn't even finish high school. I went back and got my high school diploma after I got married and had 4 kids.
Wow. Well, a lot of our artists are like that. They're self-taught, and especially our glass artists. But they go through schooling during the process,
right? Right.
But it is dedication, huh? It's like practice every day.
That's what it is. And for me, the practice was just one of joy. Just being able to paint was so joyful that I never stopped. I get up in the morning and I can't wait to go into my studio and start painting. I don't even get dressed first. And by the time I look up, it's either time to eat something or it's time to go to bed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I still don't want to stop.
Yeah. Well, you can see in your work, it's very polished, very skilled. For me, it's like a bridge between, say, Rosita Santiago and Chris Papin.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Because I see a little bit of ledger in your work, and then I see figurative beauty of native figures. And so that's the bridge I was, I think, thinking about.
Yes, and I can feel that actually in my own work, because it's starting to trend that way. And I think it's because I'm starting to see more symbolically, but yet there's still that very realistic aspect, especially when I'm painting women that I know, and all these women I do know. I want to somehow intersect and combine those two, because that's really what's going on in my world. And I want other people to be able to experience it.
Yeah. Well, it's very beautiful work. Who are some of your biggest influences in art?
Oh, gosh. That's a hard question because I didn't study art, but I've always been drawn to Georgia O'Keeffe and her sensibility and her honesty in her art. I started absorbing in myself that it doesn't have to have a lot of frills in order to be interesting or to be art. It just has to say something important. It needs to be able to speak. And I saw that in Georgia's art. And I think she's probably one of the more important influences on me. Although my art is nothing like hers, I think it's just her inspiration and her sensibilities and the fact that she's a strong woman, obviously.
I think some of the imagery I see in your work is a little bit similar in some respects to Norma Howard, who just passed away as well.
Oh, yes.
What do you think about that?
I appreciate that. Thank you. Norma was so sensitive, and she also was told by her mother early on that you need to be 10 times better than anyone else in order to make it in this field as a Native artist. And that really stuck with me because I have felt that too in many ways.
Well, it's interesting, in you're both kind of on the same trajectory where, Norma and you grew up in Americana and then reinvestigating your Native life. And so you kind of maybe lean in a backward reflection to how the tribes were or what would happen on the reservations and whatnot. But like the dancing figures, the way they're dressed, the familial scenes that were created by her and created by you, it seems also a parallel. And so that's why I asked that question. That's
very, very astute of you. There's also another side of my art, which is not shown here, which is the Choctaw side, which I do a lot of. I've illustrated a lot of legends. I've also gone through the whole Land and Blood series, which is done on ledger work, but that takes the viewpoint of my particular ancestors and how they translated through history and what happened to our tribe as far as the Trail of Tears and the land grab and everything else. Yeah. So I've always been interested in both sides of the equation. But you're right, it does look a lot like Americana.
Well, it does because of the transplant, where these tribes were taken from all over the place and condensed into Oklahoma for the most part. And it's just interesting. So most of them have to go back to the backward in time, in a sense, to understand where they're at.
Exactly.
And that's an important thing. So that's something that I really pick up on your work. I also see some a very contemporary influence at times in your work.
Well, do you see Norman Rockwell in some of my work?
Yes, in a Native way, right?
And that's exactly, there's a reason for that. I've always admired Norman Rockwell's work because it's very simple, but yet it speaks very loudly. And when I started painting on ledgers, I purposely, the first one that I painted in that genre, I named Saturday Evening Trading Post. And I want to draw people's attention to how Native peoples are just like they are, and they are just as powerful, iconic. They do everything that everybody else does. Forget these negative connotations, see them as proud, powerful, and as role models that you want to emulate. And I'm glad that you saw that too.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you capture common life, whether mostly in the Native perspective, which all of us really appreciate, very much so. In your choice of medium, why do you choose to paint with oil?
Well, that's a good question. I find that it's very versatile, and also it's very forgiving. I find that if I want to change something, it's easy to change it. I also do a lot of watercolor, and I've done a whole series in graphite. And it was a natural progression to go to oil because of the color variations, and I paint colorfully. I also do 3D art. I work in glass, wood, plastics. I'm very interested in creating anything that can get these feelings out of me. I think I'm going to be staying with oil for a while because it is, as much as, and I appreciate you saying that I'm accomplished in what I do, but I feel like a complete beginner. There is so much more to learn and to experience in oil painting. And I can't wait to discover that.
Mm-hmm. I think, our listeners know this from watching our other podcasts, but we are about innovation with refinement. And you definitely have balanced those two, and that's why you're a good fit here. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the construct of your paintings, like the paintings with the maps. Are those maps and then you're painting on top of them? Is that what's going on? So it's multimedia, right? Mixed media?
Right.
And what gave you that idea?
Well, I've always been so focused on the human figure and painting people that I don't invest much time and effort in the background and what goes on around the person. Mm-hmm. And I realized that, okay, well, I've done ledger work, but how about if I paint people on a map that is showing where they live and where they're from and what's happening today, as opposed to it just being about what happened in history. And that's what gave me that idea. And once I started painting on maps, the actual map itself, it started feeling very organic. And it's actually very thrilling. Mm-hmm. It's like a whole new experience for me. And I plan on doing quite a few more.
So a couple of years ago, you had a special opportunity to be on a cover of a magazine. How did that feel?
That was quite a process because what happened is there was an Instagram post that said, if you have new works that you're working on that you think might be good for the magazine, this was Native American art, show us what you got. Mm-hmm. And so I was in the process of working on one of those map illustrated paintings. And I said, I'm working on this. And automatically Michael Clausen contacted me and he said, well, this is great. Are you done yet? And I said, no, it's not done. I'm working on it right now, but it'll be done by market. He said, could you be done in a week? And I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't. He goes, oh, so, okay. So he waited a few days and he goes, how far are you along now? And I said, well, let me send you a picture. And so I did. And he said, this is perfect. I said, okay, thank you. And a few days later, he called me up and he said, what would you think about being on the cover of the magazine? I said, but it's not finished. He goes, I don't care. This is perfect. This is what we want. Mm-hmm. And so that's how that happened.
Well, it really answers what contemporary Native art is. And I think about the journey of contemporary Native art from the Dorothy Dunn to the Fritz Shoulder movement of the late 60s and to the present day. And it's a continuation of growth. What other awards have you won? Because I know you've done a lot of booth shows like Indian Market, the Herd Fair, and things of that nature.
Well, the most recent one was the Arizona Governor's Award for a painting that I did. That was this year. And a Director's Award for Cowboys Up. I've won numerous first place grand awards in Santa Fe Indian Market. It's hard to remember.
All of them?
Yeah, I have a whole wall which I hang all my ribbons on just to remind me, that kind of, I look at it the first thing as I swoop into my studio every morning, and it's just like, it's very affirming when you know that people appreciate your work and they see something in it. That's the best that an artist could hope for. Mm-hmm. It's nice to sell your paintings, but to know that people really can see what goes into it and they love it and appreciate it.
I bring that up because I just wanted to point out to our audience that you're very accomplished. And
well, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think we'll end it here. Obviously, as we go along, we're going to talk more, have you on other podcasts.
I hope so.
Well, thank you for coming. I'd like to encourage our audience to subscribe to us, subscribe to our podcast on any of the platforms that you feel comfortable with. You can always find our podcast on BlueRainGallery.com under the menu bar podcasts. I'd like to encourage everybody to go to our online store, BlueRainPrintShop.com, to bring art into your everyday life. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.